some of our defense innovations are still world-renowned. Munitions, I think some of the longest range munitions in the world are still South African innovations and South African produced.
I mean, what's your prediction? Are the machines going to destroy us? What's going to happen to AI?
That's one of the things we need to be careful, that in our quest for success, we do not fall prey to making statements that are unrealistic and untrue. And even in the face of adversity and competition, and even though our opponents or our competitors may do that, not to fall into that trap. We don't like to think about it. I think in that sense, AI is that mirror, and it's forcing you to look at yourself. You need to look for that creative monopoly. Essentially, he's just saying, we can't stay in this red ocean. Nothing good happens in the red ocean. You need to go into the blue ocean.
Welcome to the very first episode of Real Geeks with Ivan Regasek. I'm Ivan Regasek, the chief at ITWeb. In this new series, we'll be having longer conversations with remarkable geeks from the community, trying to figure out what makes them tick and why they do it. Successful geeks, technical geeks, otherwise interesting geeks. As my first guest today, one of the biggest geeks I know, although he wouldn't like to admit it, Mr. Nithen Naidoo, the CEO of Snode Technologies. I first met Nithen when we were planning a hackathon on the sidelines of a security summit event, and he has since become the co-organizer. And yeah, never would have happened without him. We problem solved even initially. I knew you were sharp because the first time we problem solved some of the challenges, you were coming up with some great solutions. And yeah, over time, I see you picked up many awards and accolades, expanded internationally.
Yeah.
It's really amazing to see. I think it's a story that people should hear. Hopefully, it's an inspiration to the other youngsters that you can do it. And yeah, maybe let me start with a tough question. Seeing you've accomplished these challenges, already accomplished a lot so far. What are the toughest challenges that you had to go through to be where you are?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the...
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. And likewise, you do some amazing work on the hackathon. I know your heart's always in the right place. And it's really an honor and a privilege to be sitting with you.
Yeah.
So
we got a cool crowd there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, the biggest hurdle you need to overcome is fear. Fear of failure.
Sure.
And I think, the path less traveled is that of trying to open up your own business. And, I'm not saying, bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's acting regardless of your fears. So there is a lot to be concerned about when you go and open up your own business. And I think there's a mechanism and there's like a methodology, which now I know. But, when I first went out, I didn't know. I went out pretty blindly. So I left a high-paying job, and a good career. And, I with no plan. I went forth. I think the biggest hurdle you need to overcome initially is that fear of failure. I think that holds us back a lot. A lot of us let fear dictate how we live our lives every day, the decisions we make. We don't realize how much fear actually impacts us. And once you learn to let go of that fear and, and see things clearly, assess risk for what it is, and then make a decision to go forth and do brave things and big things. Because nothing good ever happens in a comfort zone. You may be sitting in your cubicle. I didn't want to be sitting in that cubicle and being 50 and one day somebody gives me a watch and says, hey, thanks for coming. And that's all. Yeah, that's been my life's work. I felt like I could do something more meaningful. I could also create a place for people who shared that vision of wanting to do something meaningful in our space, for them to, a creative outlet, almost, a vehicle for them to realize their dreams. And, luckily that's what we kind of achieved with Snode. But I think that was the biggest hurdle. The initial hurdle was getting over my fears.
Yeah.
It's
very interesting you said that. Yeah, it's I do feel that we all have the fears. And for me also, it's not so much even fears. It's sometimes even just trying to be comfortable in myself, that I want more success and to add more value. And if that happens, then I'll be more public and it's more pressure. And then kind of, am I worthy? It's also like an internal battle that I have with my own fears, trying to move up in the world. But yeah, it's.
I think we all have that battle.
Yeah, sure.
And I think definitely sitting in my seat, I kind of appreciate how it feels to sit in your seat. And that's why we have a good relationship, is because I know, to a certain degree, those daily struggles that you go through and how that affects you, and how it's strange when you're in that leadership role. The mentality you walk in the door with is exactly what filters down to the rest of the organization. So if you walk in and you're fearful or you're uncertain, that has a systemic impact throughout the entire organization. And it's hard, right? It's hard to walk in every day and give everybody the impression that you know exactly what you're doing, when most of the time, you're just doing the best you can.
Well, everybody actually can see through that. I mean, if you're just pretending to know everything, I don't think the employees will believe it. But yeah, for sure, it's definitely added responsibility as a leader that you have on yourself, that that it impacts, that you are in the spotlight. People are, in your company will obviously look to you, even just, being down. They say, the employees want you to be happy. They don't want to see the leaders down. But then why did you decide to do it? Because it is additional responsibility. I'm sure you could have, just as background, you came up in a cybersecurity background, pen testing, through the corporates, having a nice, local job, I'm sure. Why did you decide to take the CAC and all the extra things, all the extra weight?
It's a good question.
And confront that fear.
Look, I think the first thing is I come from a background, like I was very lucky. When I left school, I got to go to companies like SensePost, and there you got to meet the likes of like Roelof Temming, Harun Mir, and they weren't just great minds in the cybersecurity space, but they were also great entrepreneurs, great inventors, and themselves very brave, right? So Harun has Thinks now, which is doing absolutely amazing, and Roelof had Paterva, right, which created Maltego, which is like world famous. So to have people like that in your life was an absolute blessing. And further into my career, I met more and more people in the same mind space. And to see that all culminate in a desk job in a bank, in a cubicle, seemed like a bit of a waste of opportunity, right? That people take that much energy and time to impart that kind of knowledge onto you, and that's all you're actually going to do with it. But I think a large part of that is, again, it's driven by the fear. There's comfort and there's certainty in a job, and to go out there and do your own thing takes it takes a brave individual, and it's hard, especially doing it from scratch. But also, I think at that time, not a lot of people were doing it. Well, definitely, even up to today, we don't have enough entrepreneurs. We don't have enough people starting up South African companies, creating jobs, creating South African brands, making global impact. with South African IP, mobilizing our intellectual capital and exporting it to the world. I do feel that solves a lot of the problems we have internally. A lot of people would, you can complain about a lot of the situation, but there's parts of our current environment and circumstance that well within our circle of control. We can mobilize our own intellectual capital. We can build and we can capitalize on digital transformation and, the fourth industrial revolution to propel South African thinking, technology, people onto the global stage and into global spotlight. I think the easier option is to leave the country and take a job in the UK or in the US. Sure. I think the easier option is maybe to take a nice high-paying job, in some big consulting firm or in the state. But we need those people to be brave. We need those people to create South African innovation, create South African businesses that will lead to South African jobs, that bring in money from overseas and, remind the world what a powerhouse we are for creativity and innovation and invention. And we absolutely are.
Yeah, we got some winners.
It's not too long ago where South African engineering was regarded as, the apex of any type of engineering, be it defense, be it, outside the realm of defense. But definitely within defense, up to today, some of our defense innovations are still world-renowned. Munitions, I think some of the longest range munitions in the world are still South African innovations and South African produced. So
I didn't know that. I thought that actually the South African military wasn't so active because of the location and stuff.
No, we've got some. Look, my favorite, my absolute favorite defense innovation is the Rooivalk, and there's a lot of things we can learn from the Rooivalk itself. The Rooivalk helicopter, right?
I've heard of it, but what's the?
Oh, okay. The Rooivalk helicopter was built on a French helicopter called the Puma.
Okay.
So it was, which was like a carrier helicopter. It wasn't an attack helicopter. And I can remember when I was a little kid, first laying eyes on the Rooivalk. And at that time, the Rooivalk had a helmet and like a high caliber machine gun that would follow the eyesight of the pilot or the line of sight of the pilot. The guns would. It's like some of the greatest innovations. At that time when I was a kid, I would look at that and I would say, like, one day I want to.
So is that the innovation that it follows the gun, or is it's a carry helicopter? What is it?
No, it's an attack helicopter. Yeah. So it's an attack helicopter. It's beautiful. It looks like the Apache, the American Apache helicopter. And it sort of came out in the same generation of helicopters. And, but, it's a little bit like Snode in a way, right? You take an old concept, like we took intrusion detection, and we said, look, hey, we can do it better. So we take the foundation of something, and that's the source of all disruption, right? Is finding something that's fundamentally flawed in the way things are done, and sometimes as an industry, we get stuck in a cycle of doing things a certain way because that's the way it's always been done. And in some ways, that's what they did then, and that's what we do at Snode, is we took something we've been doing for years, signature-based detection, and we decided, hey, look, we think there's a better way. And so we took that as a foundation and we built on top of it. Similarly, how we built on top of the Puma, we built like a world-class attack helicopter. Sure. But then there's some caveats. That's a good side of the story. The bad side of the story is up to today, we haven't really sold many Rooivalks throughout the world for various reasons. And I think that's that's the mobilization we talk about. Is we have great IP, we have great innovation, we have great invention, but we also need to learn how to commercialize it, take it globally, and make it, these big global successes.
Yeah, no, sure. Every the economy is global now. I mean, global competition. There's lots of opportunities. We all kind of know technology is changing the game.
Yeah.
So you can.
And you don't need millions to invent.
And actually, you kind of have to, I guess, even if you.
Yeah, if you want to stay relevant.
Yeah, if you want to do something meaningful. I mean, yeah, there's global competition, unless you actually on that level, you.
100%.
Yeah, and there'll be somebody better doing the same thing as you.
But we'd need millions to create the next Roy Falk, right? But in the digital domain, with very little money, you can create world-class innovations and, that scale the globe. I think I don't normally talk about money in Snode, but we built Snode of 2.5 million rands, right? And I don't want to talk about the figures today, but today it's across 6 continents, 155 client points of presence. We protect like maybe 6 million devices.
You go, boy.
Thank you, buddy. So, I mean, and I don't even believe you need the 2.5 million rand. There's lots of success stories with people who have built really large-scale companies with very, very little funding.
Yeah, I don't think the challenge is the resources necessarily. It's more those factors like fear that you talk about, and actually,
100%.
If people have the belief, the perseverance. I mean, and obviously, yeah. Just as a side note, with all those mentors that you had or in the past, is that also why you like to give back so much? Because you said, early in your
100%.
career, you had really good mentors, and now, even apart from the hackathon, I see you all over the place, man.
100%.
Doing all sorts of things.
I can remember Roelof Temming telling me one day, I was thanking him because he gives me so much time. And he said, look, you want to thank me one day, teach someone the way I'm teaching you. And that stuck with me. And yeah, that's one of the big reasons why we do things like the hackathons and why we spend so much time teaching kids and why we bring kids from disadvantaged communities into the business to give them an opportunity to get a work experience, to study further, and to get into, big, and to get into the industry, and just creating those opportunities because, without those mentors, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. Yeah, I'm the product.
Yeah. What do you feel is the biggest thing they actually taught you? Is it the belief that, they're just normal orcs and they can do it, so you can do it, or?
No, I think up to today, for me, they're not normal guys.
They're not normal.
No, I don't think. For me, Arun Mir, he's the most humble guy, right? And he's the most but he's they're absolutely my heroes. So I don't put them in a normal bracket. I don't think in all honesty, I think anything I've achieved comes close to what they've achieved. But I am to some degree happy that their time wasn't wasted on me, and that I kind of created the platform to similarly the way they created a platform for me, I'm creating a platform for others, and that makes me feel like in some way I'm giving back.
Yeah. I don't mean that they're not exceptional people. It's just for me, like earlier in my life, I sort of thought that maybe some people are success or something. There's almost like non-human. There's something that's just different that I can never be. Kind of now everybody's actually, really human like me, no matter, how impressive they are in whatever achievements that they do. And, some of the stuff is amazing, of course, you'd never do it, but, maybe with the same working dedication, if I had the same passion for that stuff, then, I'm also a human being. So, we all kind of, and yeah, it definitely inspired me since I'm really successful and incredible people, really being humble. I almost expected them to be, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And just being like normal people. And yeah, I mean, yeah, life is so much psychology. So yeah, sure.
No, I think also it's about knowing yourself, knowing your own strengths and weaknesses and accepting them. I remember like in the very early stages of my career, I wanted to emulate people a lot. I wanted to try and be like them instead of like trying to understand myself better. I think there's a certain degree of introspection, knowing what you're good at and knowing, where you're not so strong, and accepting those weaknesses and doubling up on your strengths, I think is pretty important. I think I can tell you the earliest days of when I started on my own were some of the darkest days of my life. So, you don't have a job. You have no form of income. And it's very easy for people to think you're unemployed. And like a lot of people did think I was unemployed.
Yeah. And most of the people that try the same thing as you failed. So,
Well, I don't think you fail. I think you give up. Because, I mean, interesting fact, I was actually telling someone this week, the Snode devices that are through these 155, 6 continents, everything, sat in my mom's kitchen for 4 years before the first person bought them. Literally, they used to sit on the kitchen table. They were stacked up on the kitchen table. We couldn't sell them. So, it's very easy at that point in time. I think a lot of people actually give up rather than fail. They give up. It's easy to give up at that particular point in time. I think we started a world-class, we were going to be a world-class cyber defense firm. But I mean, our first job was for a guy named Yadir Mulu.
Okay.
He's the CEO of Levenger's now.
Okay.
Back then, he had a pizza parlor in Pretoria. And our first job was connecting his computers to his printer slips and to his infrared. And interestingly enough, the guy who did the work with me, he was my first employee. He's now our client. He's the head of IT for one of our bigger clients. And it's funny how the world works in mysterious ways. And his brother is now at Snode, has started with us for 2 years. But back then we were just 2 people. We were claiming to be building this world-class cyber security company. And there we were, like, running cables in this pizza place, trying to get the dot matrix printer to work. So, I mean, you start with humble beginnings. I mean, that job, I think we got paid 3,000 rands for it. His salary was 3,000 rands. And I didn't, make a salary from Snode. Sure, I can't tell you for how long. For the first few years. And even after that, it wasn't like one day suddenly things turned for me and, it was raining money. It was a slow progression. We got our first couple of clients. We ended up doing work for, the likes of PwC, all their technical assessment work, Department of Defense. We ended up doing work for them, which we can't talk about too much right now. But that was the old business. That was the consulting business.
Well, good. I'm glad that the Department of Defense is working with you.
Yeah. Well, worked with the old business. Yeah. I can't tell you who works with our current business. Yeah, you start there. You start at the pizza parlor, and then the next thing you know, you're booked for 6 months, and you're doing work for, the biggest defense interests in the country. You're doing work for the biggest consulting firms. You're doing work for all the big banks. Yeah. That's how it kind of unfolds.
Yeah, what's that called? The imposter syndrome. Then you sort of start feeling, am I faking this? Or that's kind of that kind of fear. I think they call it, I hear lots of famous people have it, and they still kind of get an imposter syndrome. Sometimes you're like, is it? So I'm surrounded by the generals and whoever else, and it's just little on me.
I don't know how to like pinpoint imposter syndrome, because like a lot of people talk to me about it. But the one thing I can tell you is some days when I look, and I shouldn't actually be saying this where my team can hear it, but when I look at what's going on around me, it's absolutely crazy. When I look at like some of the, when you realize you're deploying tech in the jungles in South America, and you just think to yourself, hey, reality check, do you really know what you're doing, or do you really have everything under control? And I guess that's similar to the sensation you're talking about. Is that sometimes that does happen. You can't believe some of the things that actually happening around you is happening.
You said everybody has the fears, and they're not necessarily bad.
No, fear is a good thing.
Yeah.
The absence of fear is not bravery, like I said. Yeah. The fear is very healthy.
Yeah. And similar to kind of like that Steve Jobs message, you do what you love, because in the end you'll persevere. You're not going to give up.
Yeah.
But you kind of also said that you do it for you wanted meaning in your life.
Yeah.
You didn't want to end up with a job and just living in a cubicle or whatever.
And I definitely didn't do it for money either.
So what is what is that meaning? What do you want to achieve with Snode?
I guess on a personal level, I just want to realize realize or maximize my potential, not in an egotistical way, in the fact that so many people invested so much to get me to where I am, right? Whether it's my investors or whether it's the clients who, ultimately these people believe in you, and you just want to, you want to realize that potential. And the potential is there to be world class. And that's definitely for me the target. It's not to be the richest. I don't mind if not everybody in the room is a Snode client, but the happiest people in the room will be Snode clients. The most secure people in the room, I want them to be Snode clients. And I think more importantly than that, is the way I was a little kid and I looked at that Rooivalk helicopter and I was inspired to build something South African that would be great, that the world would embrace and adopt and buy, that was built right on our doorstep. I feel we haven't really given this next generation, your kids, my kids, something like that to look at and say like, oh man, like driving down the highway.
I really need these stories. It's such a great story. We really need these stories.
Well, we don't have enough of them. So what's going to be my kid's Rooivalk that inspires him to do great things? So hopefully, that's what we're building with Snode. It's just a platform for something for South African kids to look at and say, we can do it. And if that's all we do, that'll be enough. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it will be. Yeah, so carrying the South African flag, proudly I say. I didn't ask you at the beginning, how much time do you spend in Vietnam versus here these days?
So Vietnam, I spend most of my time in Southeast Asia at the moment. We're trying to get the business to expand in Southeast Asia. Also, those economies are doing really well. The other places I spend a lot of my time is across Africa. So business is, we look after a lot of South African businesses, but about 50% of our business is actually cross-border. So spending time, outside of the country has become my norm, and helping us try and establish ourselves and build presence globally is a large part of my mission. It's not been incredibly easy because different countries, different cultures, and also coming from South Africa, claiming to be world-class cyber defense company takes a lot of convincing to establish yourself in those markets as a player. But we've been fairly successful. So Southeast Asia is our second biggest region after Africa. So it's not time wasted. But there's a lot more work to do. Yeah. I spent about 3 months in South Africa this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're looking to come back at the end?
We'll always be South African. And I'll always be South African. And I think what we're building is South African. So as much as we look after people in all these different countries, they all get looked after by our SA team in Centurion.
Yeah.
That's like down the road.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
Yeah, so we run 24/7. We don't follow the sun and hand over to anybody cross-border. The Snode team is a South African team, and the tech is built in South Africa. The hardware appliances are assembled in South Africa, and the services are delivered from South Africa. Yeah. And we're going to keep it that way.
Well, I've heard you also say that it was almost easier internationally for people to take you seriously than it was locally.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of also, at first sight, you say, okay, I got AI, which is going to learn the things, all maths, nice, it's going to solve your security. Sounds really good, but, maybe a little bit too good to be true. So what do you think the difference is what is the roadblock? Because why do people actually internationally, they take you more serious than locally?
I think locally, we don't have that self-belief. So, it's not just a fear of maybe you think you can't do it. We have this impression that we as a country can't achieve great things. Like we have this assumption that something from the US or the UK is always going to be better than something that's built in SA, or that SA cannot be the inventor or innovator, prior to, a security product that's, coming out of Israel or any other country. So I think when Snode got its first success, I'll tell you an interesting story. One of the heads of security at one of the banks, and he's a really good friend of mine. We were doing work for one of the banks and they saw Snode for the first time. And so the security manager asked him, it's like, hey, have you heard of Snode? Have you seen it? And he said, it's like a cheaper version of I want to say another vendor's name. But it's a UK vendor, right? I don't want to say their name. I don't think, that's cool. But he said, it's a cheaper version of this UK brand, which was the number one cybersecurity startup at the time. So before you feel insulted, it's not really the world's worst insult for him to say that we were second to such a big, massive brand. That was globally, it was just absolutely dominant.
But it hit a spot with you.
Well, here's the inaccuracy. We were actually not cheaper. We're the same price as them. But I think the psychology is important, right? The reason we existed is because we were a cheaper derivative of a UK product, not because we were an equally as good product. And today, I think even if you ask that brand and their ambassadors in South Africa, they tell you, I think their product's amazing. But I think, a lot of people I speak to in their team thinks our product's amazing. But I don't necessarily think that was the case when we started. I think people just naturally assumed we're either cheaper but we're inferior in some way. And we weren't. A large part of us believed we were superior. And if that wasn't somewhat true, I don't think we'd have the success we'd have. And I don't think that's about me. I'm not making a comment about me. I'm making a comment about us as South Africans. We can build world-class innovation, and we can do things and achieve things. And sometimes I think the only barrier to us doing those great things is our own minds, right? Because we don't believe we can.
But I do think it also highlights another point that maybe as a culture we also, there's another point there. Because I agree that if you were American, Russian, Israeli, UK, and you say, okay, I've built this product, there's just...
South Africans would look at it differently. When you say you're a boy from Pretoria, and but I mean, give them some sort of credit. I don't know how I would feel if, a 30-something-year-old guy from Pretoria came and dropped and I'm a big bank, and said, hey, listen, I've got the next generation of cyber solution here. As much as you'd want to believe in it, and as much as you want to plug it in, etc., that's a scary prospect. So, I mean, if anything, I need to give credit to all those first early adopters, because they really, without them, I wouldn't have a company. And they really did respond and say, okay, let's plug it in. And a lot of those, actually all of them, are still our clients today. I owe them a lot, right?
Yeah,
because
it says something, People keep.
My old boss at Investec told me the saying once. I've heard it countless times after, but he was the first guy who told me this. He said nobody got fired for buying Cisco. And I think the point was,
that's a second.
If I plug this thing in and it fails, that's my job. So think about how brave the people who did plug Snode in those early days, how brave those people were, because like he said, nobody got fired for buying Cisco. But I guess the opposite of that is, eyes are on you. You're taking this South African startup based out of Pretoria, and you're plugging in them to defend your large multinational JSE listed company. Those guys were brave. And luckily, they were right, Yeah.
Yeah, they're still clients.
They're still clients today. So I hope they get all the credit they deserve for helping us build Snode, Yeah.
And
they're the true heroes.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you're breaking that stereotype that you can do it. It is that good.
Well, if that's all we do, if that's all I do, is break that stereotype and that mental block for a lot of young people to start realizing that they can build world-class innovations, world-class technology, and they can go global, and they can create companies that create jobs and create opportunities, create a vehicle for fellow South Africans to realize their dreams. Well, then, Snode, I think, served its purpose. And so ever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I want to ask you how you built it, and but firstly on the sort of techie geek stuff, what was your initial passion for IT, and how did you get into cybersecurity and the general sort of disciplines that you most enjoy? Obviously, security, networking. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not like the most technical person. Not in comparison to some of the people I kept company with and I worked with,
Sure.
etc. So I was lucky enough. I worked with, Rogan Dawes and Dominic White, and so when I think of myself, I don't think of myself as a super technical security person. But I did learn at a very early stage in my career. I got a good foundation, right? from working with the right people and learning from the right people, enough of a foundation that would help me apply my mind to certain types of problems and build technical solutions. I think what served me well is the fact that possibly I'm not deeply technical to the point where I still had an appreciation for the other aspects that go into entrepreneurship. So there was this desire to build a business. There was the ability to, communicate with people, the value proposition, communicate with people, the vision. And I think sometimes if you're lucky, you're like perfection. You're like the Harun Mirs of the world, and you can do everything equally well. You can be deeply technical. You can be a fantastic entrepreneur. You can market, and sell without selling. But that wasn't me. I'm less in all categories, but enough in all categories that I could at least achieve some level of success. I've always liked technical subjects, even though probably not the area where I excel. And so, that experimentation with different technology, operating systems, etc. I never set out to build Snode. We built Snode, by the way, completely by mistake.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that.
Well, I want that's my next question. This is just a lead-up question.
Okay. So, I'll tell you.
But firstly, if you want to get on that, I think you're very hard on yourself. I mean, saying a lot of techie. I mean, I've heard you speak. You obviously have a career in this stuff. I don't know, really. And yeah, I don't know. From my perspective, I really find it amazing that so many different people concentrate on different tasks. I don't know, even people that figuring out how do we make this Formula One car go faster, and I don't know. That's that interests them. They're doing like all the work on that, and it's amazing to that people can solve all these problems. How did it? Was it a mistake?
How did it come to life?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the truth. We were providing services to the consulting, consulting firms. But the truth of the matter is, consulting firms are not in the business of being resellers of intellectual capital, right? They provide intellectual capital. So they're not typically middlemen for intellectual capital. So our entire business was hinging on the fact that we could provide services and assessments within the cyber domain, which they could not. So we had to continuously reinvent ourselves to stay relevant so that people would come to our company and ask us to perform certain types of assessments. One of the assessments we came up with was something we called network traffic analysis, which you can still buy in the market today. And essentially, you send us a snapshot of your traffic, and we'll analyze it for all different kinds of threats: fraud, malware, insider collusion, any sort of digital threat that could be realized. We'd be able to find it within that traffic. And we sold that, and I think the first job we got was actually from one of the banks. And we were going to get a small snapshot of traffic, which they sent to us. Just happened to be like 98 gigabytes of.
Yeah.
They took like a small, short snapshot, and they sent us a 98 gigabyte file. And we actually didn't know how we were going to process 98 gigs of traffic in such a complex environment. And so initially we started by hand. We wrote a few scripts to analyze the traffic captures. And really we designed the service to look at SCADA networks for the mines, because the mines didn't want to pen test in SCADA environments. And so SCADA environments actually generate a lot less traffic. So we weren't expecting...
What's a SCADA environment?
So, inside the mines, the actual operational technology, so the conveyor belts, the crushers, all of that, they all have analog machines with digital interfaces. The digital interfaces are what we call SCADA. And what SCADA does is it's data acquisition. And they all speak to a historian, and in some mines, depending on the advancement of the mine, they use the data like to understand the amount of rock on the conveyor belt, and that's being fed into the crusher and the blade speed in the crusher. Because if you break a blade in like De Beers crushers, and it needs to get repaired, every couple of minutes you're losing a few millions. So the SCADA systems actually regulate the amount of inputs and outputs so that the mine runs super efficiently. Also, advanced mines, they use that data to predict when the crusher is going to fail so that you can order a new blade so that downtime is minimized, right? And they don't generate a lot of traffic because it's a couple of machines, very hub and spoke kind of architecture, easy to find threats. I don't know if it speaks protocols like Modbus. So the protocols are slightly different, but it was an area where not a lot of people had experience, but we had a lot of experience in the mines. Network traffic analysis was designed for the mines, but the first client just happened to be a bank, and they sent us 98 gigs of their DMZ, which wasn't what we really planned for, but we weren't going to turn the work away. And also, really, it was a proving ground. So it took us about a month to analyze that first job. Of course, we were only charging them like for a week's worth of work, but it took us a month, and then a month became a week, and then a week became a day, and a day became an hour became a minute, and then a minute became real time. And that's when we realized, actually, we had mistakenly built the product. And we tried everything. We tried AI, we tried machine learning, we went through signature kind of analysis, and eventually we found that mathematics was the one thing it didn't need to learn. It was fast, Bayesian mathematics specifically. It was fast, it could process, and it could actually deliver really, really good results.
Which kind of mathematics?
Bayesian.
Bayesian, what does that mean?
Okay.
Like you say, you're not technical, but you love maths, so it's awesome.
No. So Bayesian mathematics is actually quite easy to understand. Bayesian mathematics is also what a lot of the other non-signature based technologies like Snode are using for detection. They're all we somehow as a collective consciousness, we all came up with this idea that Bayesian mathematics would work.
I love maths, but I haven't heard of it.
So if every day I give you 10 apples and 2 oranges, and today so far I've given you 1 apple and 1 orange, what's the probability that the next fruit I give you is going to be an apple versus it being an orange?
Okay.
Right? Okay. So very high probability. That's basically Bayes' theorem. I know it sounds simple, but that's essentially what it is. And if you want a good idea of where you use it in everyday life, think about your spam filter. So it goes through your spam email, and every time it sees the word pills, Viagra, medication, the probability of this being a spam email suddenly becomes the apples and oranges scenario. And that's pretty much Bayes, right? So it looks at the probability of something being malicious based on what it knows of your environment and what it's learned of your environment, and it scores it accordingly. And if you're if you're an intelligence agency, you're going to set that filter for scoring really low. And if you're, public Wi-Fi at McDonald's, you're going to set that, that threshold really high. And it kind of understands the difference between the two. And then it can detect threats. But if you think about it, there's a big delta between what is artificial intelligence, what is machine learning, and what is, cognitive computing and mathematics. But there's definitely a relationship as like a common thread that's goes through. So Bayesian mathematics, when you use it in terms of Bayes' theorem or a Bayesian filter, for example, is very much considered machine learning, right? I think that's the relationship. I think where people sometimes get it wrong, where it's difficult for me, especially in the market today, is people use terminology like artificial intelligence and machine learning, interchangeably. And for me, it's not. Machine learning is a subcomponent that goes into creating artificial intelligence along with the likes of computer vision, etc. So for me, it's very hard when people say, oh, does your cybersecurity product have AI? I don't know whether to say yes or no, because the truth of the matter is you can't use the two interchangeably. It has machine learning, but it doesn't have all the other components that go up into the overarching title of AI. And I think there is a little bit of a marketing play using words like autonomy and autonomous when actually it's automated. So when people ask you, hey, is it autonomous? They're like, well, actually there's nothing that's autonomous. Yeah, autonomous maybe in the English sense of the word, but not in the computer science sense, right? And so there's a very big correlation. But I think, and it's not that I'm a purist or anything like that. It's just, I don't want to.
But I think that's what people actually understand as AI, because that general artificial intelligence, obviously it's not here. If you're saying completely autonomous, then I don't know, this machine will be so smart to figure everything out. And how we?
Yeah, I think that's. But it's hard, right? It's hard for me to market something as AI when I think it's not AI, as autonomous when I think it's just automated, and but it's it's also difficult to exist in a market where people use language like that quite freely, right? I did an article once about 1 in every 3. I can't remember the exact number of AI products actually have no AI. And I think a large part of, when you think about the cybersecurity market, I think the amount of product we have and diversity, it can't sustain itself in the existing market with the existing demand. And I think what that causes us to do is, of course, compete. And when we're competing, that's when our sales and marketing tends to overtake our actual engineering.
Sure.
And the narrative with sales and marketing becomes, we're gonna stop, 100% threat detection. There's no such thing as 100% threat detection.
No, sure.
I understand why they're marketing it that way. I understand how they scored 100% on a certain type of detection sort of criteria. But nobody thinks, it's a bit misleading to the consumer, right? Yeah. Also, stopping ransomware in its tracks.
Like every single product I've seen over the last, I think now you can't actually launch a computer program software without actually saying it's got AI.
Or something unbelievable, right? But
even for anything, it's every single one, it's almost mandatory since the hype train came along. It's like, it's also, it's got some AI in it.
Yeah, but one thing is that the market, it's amazing how the market is educated not by the white papers, that the scholars release, but by the marketing material that, the marketing department puts out, to sell the product. When people talk about, white papers, so often the source of that white paper is really some form of marketing. And I think sometimes that can be misleading. I think that's one of the things we need to be careful, that in our quest for success, we do not fall prey to making statements that are unrealistic and untrue, and even in the face of adversity and competition, and even though our opponents or our competitors may do that, not to fall into that trap. I think there's something to be said for being authentic, honest, and true in what you deliver, and not letting your marketing and sales department override your actual engineering capability. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I think for sure, but I think any good CIO, CISO, whoever is responsible for keeping this stuff, they'll also know that it's fluff. I
mean, you're not going to pull the wool over their eyes, and
they know this. If they've been doing it for a while, there's no such thing as 100%, or this isn't the magic bullet or whatever.
100%. And but I mean, in the same breath, we wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the marketing of some of our competitors. Because in the early days, the reason why Snode didn't sell for so many years was people didn't understand what Snode was. And, we'd go into, I can remember going into Altron. And I'm not saying anything bad about Altron, but Altron was looking at the Snode appliance. And the guy from Altron told me, but I've got a firewall and it's got an IDS. It's like, but this is so much more than an IDS. It's like, but it detects threats, right? And it stops them. That my firewall does it. So he couldn't break away from that model of thinking, or from what he understood an intrusion detection system to be, to this new idea of a network detection and response system, which is what we call it today. Until our very smart competitors came into the market and sort of educated the market. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because in one way I'm saying, hey, the marketing guys and the sales guys, and they're leading education in the market, and it's not a great thing. But a large part of my success hinged on how beautifully they articulated what Snode does for, I think the irony in that is amazing, right? And I'll never forget one of the most beautiful articulations. Again, it's a pretty, I'm not saying, I'm choosing not to mention any vendor names, but I'm sure a lot of people will know who I'm talking about. And it's a compliment. They beautifully articulated what we did by comparing it to the immune system, right? And I remember the first time reading it, and I was like, wow, that's a pretty amazing way to help somebody understand what, we're trying to do. And although I don't think we have the same product, and I don't think they think we have the same product either.
So can you give us that analogy? How does it compare to?
I'm coming into the room telling the guy from Altron that, listen, I've got this detection system that uses Bayesian mathematics, and it can detect stuff that you can't, and it'll respond to an attack automatically in real time. And he's thinking, oh, you're describing my firewall. I'll almost getting...
No, I mean like the immune system, because those are careful from science and maths. Maths is the language of the universe. We're kind of just figuring out the rules, and then those things that we can prove, that kind of is maths. That's kind of how I understand maths to be. Science is, okay, we can mostly reproduce it. It's a thing, but, it's different, proven in many cases.
Well, if you think of the immune system,
and
you think of...
So basically everything there is discovered and not invented. Like all these things that people... All the inventions which we made were actually discoveries of the laws of the universe and how the actual world works. Somebody kind of... And we're replicating most of the things that we do with technology is we're replicating what we can see and trying to replicate it. Even like in simple terms, I believe like code should be representing of the real world as much as possible. You should describe your business things. You should, just semantically, but neural networks are based on how the brain works, and There's so much stuff, that we learn from nature or anything. It's not really you invented how the brain works. You discovered how the brain works, or how the hummingbird flies, or a helicopter, or something.
That's very true. So that's true for Snode. Snode comes from principles in physics like the observer effect. The observer effect means if I tell you, I give you a camera, and I tell you to go and photograph gorillas in their natural habitat, would you actually be able to do that? And the observer effect would say no, because by virtue of you being in their natural habitat with the camera, they would alter their behavior, right? So,
well, all those that I think in quantum theory, there's a property to electrons or to atoms that they're scientifically, reproducibly on many tests, they behave differently. Whether you're busy watching them or not busy watching them, it's really like bogus. But when you think about it, if you film how the electrons flow, in a wave, and you're busy filming it, and then you're not filming it, it's different.
Yeah. No, I know what you're speaking about, like when you try to measure something's speed, but by putting the instrument of measurement, you affect the speed by measuring, and that's similar to very similar to how we build Snode, right? Because that's the inspiration for Snode, is if you introduce a rogue agent into any sort of state, into any system, it'll have a change of state. So those components which you do control and you do monitor, their behavior will change. And if you could understand those subtle changes in behavior and attribute them to some form of threat, well, it's a different way of looking at security, because with signature-based detection, you're looking for threats you know. With this kind of observer effect, we're looking at the things we know and how they behave, and then we're looking for the changes in state. And then we take that change in state and we attribute that to a potential threat, a risk, type of malware, virus, threat actor, lateral movement, whatever the case may be. And it's amazing how physics, biology, and all of these things can be used as inspiration for technological innovation. Very much like you say, right? We don't invent anything. We just discover it or reproduce it in many ways, right? Yeah.
The immune system. I love the stories.
Yeah.
So can you compare it to an immune system? Because also like the way that I could, and also the way that I perceive the world is often, it is a little bit like I relate to, I don't know, mathematical principles or computers or stuff.
Yeah.
And even COVID, I kind of understood it as a human virus. It's kind of sitting dormant in your thing. That's the best way I could understand what's actually, or computer virus, that's relating it to a computer virus, how, that computer virus is also inside your body. So can you give me the story of how that immune system works and how the Snode product, I don't know, boosts your immune system?
Well, in all fairness, since the narrative belongs to another company, I'm not going to say the immune system compared to Snode, but just in terms of this kind of defense.
Sure.
Essentially, when a rogue agent enters your system, which would be your body, and some form of your body then automatically fights off the disease or the germ or the threat or the attacker. And that was a far better way of explaining to someone what the technology did than me telling them, look, it's Bayesian mathematics, superior threat detection, that's going to automatically respond and disable threats in real time.
It's much easier to understand.
Much easier to understand, right? I think to that point, it's a beautiful analogy, number one. I think the point I'm trying to make is that marketing and salespeople, I've got a huge appreciation for them when you see really good marketing and really good sales. I mean, what they do is both an art and a science. And it's, you always admire those things that you don't have. It's one of those areas, like at Snode, we don't even have a sales team at the moment. And for a very long time, we never did have a sales team. A lot of our growth is through word of mouth, clients saying good things about us and us picking up other clients. But when I look at some of the work they do like that, you can't help but, admire their work. So I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I think on the one side, I'm saying, hey, as an industry, we've got to be careful not to let the marketing and the, get too reach further than the actual technology's capability. Yeah, but at the same time, take nothing away. I probably wouldn't. Snode would still be sitting in my mother's kitchen if it wasn't for the beautiful marketing and sales that some of our competitors put into the market. So, and it's an interesting point, because a lot of the competitors think like, hey man, we're arch rivals, or we're enemies, or we hate them, and I actually don't. I like what they do. I like them. I admire what they're good at. I wish sometimes I was as good at sales and at marketing, but I'm not. But I still have a deep appreciation for everybody. Yeah.
In the ecosystem, I've heard you say that before, and also have a similar view. Competition is a good thing, and it's good. It's good people working on these same problems, and
especially when the people you're competing against are good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best, because it just brings out the best in both them and you.
No, like in a very in a selfish kind of way, you'll be thinking, well, they're taking my budget. It's going to the competition and it's not coming to me. But generally in the overall thing.
Well, I have a theory. I think we live in this world where we have this mindset of scarcity instead of abundance. When you ask me, I don't think any of my competitors are taking my budget. I'm not looking to eat any other SA company's lunch. I'm looking to create a conduit for SA companies to export SA companies, SA IP, SA talent, even if it's sales talent, to the rest of the world, right? Because I think it's that outstanding. So whereas, another local competitor may feel, hey, listen, Nithen's not a good guy. He's taking all our business. I'm not trying to take your business. What I'm trying to do is export businesses like yours. Thinking like ours, businesses like ours, not like yours, like ours, and take it to places like Thailand, Philippines, Cambodia, Indonesia, Vietnam. And so a lot of the time when we go and we get success in another area, we try and take other South African companies with us. Now, the one is a mindset of scarcity, right? Like, this is the market and it's all so small. And I'm saying, no, have this mindset of abundance. It's a huge world. Most of the thought leadership out there, like if you go to a security conference, there's always a South African speaker. You think about the top security products. Now we're talking about Maltego. Maltego's world renowned. South African. Talk about Harun, South African. You don't have to go far to find South African impact on the, on a global scale, right? Let's export it. Why are we so content playing in the small pond? Let's go out into the big ocean. And then you'll realize that actually, it's that mindset of abundance. You can make that paradigm shift. As my competitor, you'll realize that I'm actually your friend.
Yeah. I've heard you say this mindset of abundance versus scarcity, and I was like a little light bulb went on in my head. That was some wise words.
But you're biased because you're my friend.
But it's also far more than but it's kind of like, life is from within or something. It's, you can create reality with your mind. It's all like your perception and stuff. Kind of that observer effect, I think it's something in quantum physics. I think there's two definite, I can't explain it very well. From kind of what I saw is like, if you don't film it, it behaves in a wave. If you do film it, it's praise. So it's completely two different like shapes of how the thing goes. But they kind of, there's definitely people that say that they can, electrons themselves have behaved differently whether they're being observed or not. And then it's kind of like that perception. Ultimately, we're all living our own perception and, making your perception the best that you can make it. My strategy to make it from within. And if I can manage to make it from within, then, well, whether it's without or outside or not, to me, it'll be like that. Most likely, I'll either attract it to myself or I'll just guarantee it because I'll have better performance. But it almost doesn't matter if you brainwash yourself enough to.
Yeah, you're getting deeply philosophical here, but yes, true. What you, I do believe,
And
what your mind puts out there is what you will manifest in reality, right? If you, if you put your intention out there, the universe will provide. But if you're gonna have those positive thoughts and the mindset of abundance, you will start seeing the opportunities. You'll start seeing everything as an opportunity rather than seeing everybody as a threat. And that's what's going to open up doors for you. And just to make it a little bit more real world, right? If you're a provider and maybe you have no relationship with us because you think we're bad guys and we're taking business from you, then you're probably not on our radar as one of those companies that we're trying to export into new markets, right? So here you're sitting in your bubble and you're like, screw that guy, he's taking business from us, we're going to show him. And you're thinking all these evil thoughts and, you're harvesting all these evil plans on how you're going to derail us. When actually, if you just got on the same boat with us, we'd be accessing new markets and we'd achieve more in synergy. And I think, there's this old thought of like in business, there's got to be a winner and a loser. But in business, there can be win-win-win, right? The client can win, you can win, and the people in the market, your peers, because they're not your competitors. Not necessarily, unless you want to make them your competitors, right? They can win too, right? And people fail to see that collaboration beats competition. Competition is bad. Competition is not great for anybody because it drives prices down and it drives quality down and it drives innovation down. I think it's Peter Thiel, right? Peter Thiel is, he's famous for a lot of things. But the thing I like about him is he's one of the founders of Palantir, and I'm a big Palantir fan. Along with everybody else in our office, and for some of their thinking. And Peter Thiel says in one of his books, you need to look for that creative monopoly. Essentially, he's just saying, we can't stay in this red ocean. Nothing good happens in the red ocean. You need to go into the blue ocean. You need to use innovation and invention and create your own space. And I think that's what we're big protagonists of, right? Is we've got all this intellectual capital, but we're so often copying what's happening in the US, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in the UK, what's happening in China, what's happening in Russia. And we're not believing in ourselves enough to say, hey, let's be different. But not just different. Let's be not different for the sake of being different. Let's be different. Let's be better. And I think if you took a lot of the people who exist in the market with us, and if we all approach the market with that kind of thought process, we'd all have our own unique sort of selling points, right? And as a group, if you took those unique selling points across Africa, you'd be solving one of the biggest problems facing the continent, right? Because cyber is not just a problem because we're losing money, but we're losing IP, right? The survey information for the resources that lie in the ground beneath us is getting stolen, and then the resources themselves are getting, history has a funny way of repeating itself. What's happening in the digital world today, it's fairly similar to, what happened many years ago. Does that make sense? You want me to elaborate on that?
Yeah, when?
I'll give you something recent, right? Recently...
Like what's happening today and before, just specifically.
So recently, let's take... I don't want to make too much of a political statement here, but let's take something that happened recently. Kenya. Kenya was impacted by Anonymous Sudan, where they had distributed denial of service attacks on the M-Pesa platforms in some government systems, etc. Anonymous Sudan is not anonymous, nor are they Sudanese. I don't know if you know that.
I'm you're not a techie, I'm not a cybersecurity, so.
Okay, so the hacker collective, Anonymous, the hacktivist group, right? So Anonymous Sudan, given a name, Anonymous Sudan, to attribute them to 2 points, right? One, the hacker collective Anonymous,
sure,
and then Sudan to let you believe that they're Sudanese nationality, but they're not. So if you go back and you look at the activity for Anonymous Sudan, you'll see they're Russian speaking. Now, I'm not saying they're Russian, or I'm not making any sort of political statement. But you look at their infrastructure maps back to the infrastructure for Killnet, which is also, Russian related. The point I'm trying to make is the influence of, other countries in African affairs is strong. It's always been very strong.
Yeah, it's so scary to me, how safe is our government and with this digital stuff. If
100%.
As a citizen, that's so scary to me.
So if you're thinking cyber is just purely about ransomware and a couple of bucks that, the hospitals need to pay to attackers or whatever the case may be, you're missing the deeper point. Recently, we spoke at GovTech, and I actually spoke about this, and I used Crypto AG as an example, which was encryption devices that were sold to many countries, not just in Africa, but across the world, Asia, etc., that 40 years later we found out was a front for the CIA and the BSA, where they were eavesdropping on all our communications. Now, these devices went into, all our critical communications, Office of the President, or,
sure,
embassies around the world, etc. And it was used to eavesdrop on friend and foe alike. So when you think about cyber and you think about the impact of cyber, you're just looking at the top of the iceberg. When you look at things like ransomware, etc., the majority of it lies beneath. It's everything from mass cognitive influence, which is like misinformation or information warfare, or psychological psyops, psychological operations, to affect things like elections. Very similar to what, the US claimed happened with Russia and their elections. That's been happening for years on African soil.
Well, of course it's happening everywhere.
It happened for the Intel violence.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't want to go deeply into the topic, but the question is how much of that is attributed to, non-national threat actors, so actors from other countries, and why the influence in Africa. So having a strong cyber capability, both for South Africa and for the continent as a whole, is imperative.
Yeah. If we really want to.
If we want to
be a top nation, and it really is. But just maybe to take it back a little bit, because that scarcity is abundance and kind of, I don't know, all that, you can create your reality and law of attraction and whatever. And that is largely how I do understand things up to this point in my life, but it's so much harder to do. And then it's also like competition. Obviously, from one perspective, they might be taking food from you. You're not happy about it. From a different perspective, it's good for the ecosystem. The more cybersecurity defense there is, the safer we'll actually be. Same as the more media there is, the more people are informed. But then we don't live in a world like that. As cyber, the threat landscape.
Yeah.
Will tell you, and you obviously from the cyberspace, like actually of all these really probably evil things that people are doing to either to get some bucks or whatever it is. I am also very concerned about, just our data and stuff, and knowing how difficult it is to actually get it completely right, or impossible, or difficult. Yeah, and the sort of reputation of our government, it's like we really hope that we have had some major breaches, citizen data being taken, and it's just like the side sort of thought that, a terrorist group or a different attacking country or whatever the threat actor is, could, abuse our situation, and somehow it's just, I don't know, as a citizen, it makes me like, oh, like as a country, we need to fix it, yeah.
Look, it's not easy, but it's actually not that difficult if you think about it. So you think about any of the recent incidents that we've had, right? In about 2 of every 3 of those incidents, Snode was involved in some way when after the incident had transpired in assisting. Through all of those, with the exception of the president's phone and the potential for the Apple zero-click, Pegasus infection, right? All of those were well understood vulnerabilities or easily mitigated risks, where we failed to get the basics right. So you think about some of those companies were very transparent about what happened. One of them, for example, left a weak password on a database that was exposed on the internet. I think you know who I'm talking about. I don't want to mention their name, of course, because that's not the point. But I mean, that's something, it's a large part of securing yourself is about getting the basics right. And if you can do that, you can have a formidable cyber security posture. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the basics are the basics because they're easy. The basics are the basics because they're essential. Over and above that, I think if you're to achieve any true form of cyber resilience at a national level, you need intelligence. So you need to understand, I'm a big Art of War, my favorite book, Sun Tzu. Okay. To everybody listening, if you haven't read the book, read it. Okay. It's literally, it's in my DNA. But you need to know your enemy, and you need to know yourself. You think of yourself as the vulnerability, where our assets are, where our data resides, etc. And sadly, in that particular case, they didn't know where that asset was exposed to the internet. And then the vulnerability, right? There's know where your weaknesses are. Weak password, But over and above that is know your enemy, right? Know the threats, know what they're after, know, where they are, what's their motives, what's their, their tradecraft, their tactics, their procedures, what tools they use, etc. So do I think national cyber defense is this unsolvable problem? Absolutely not. I think it's very, very, very solvable. As a matter of fact, I think South Africa is well positioned to rise to be one of like the top 10 cyber superpowers if we do the right things. I do think we can have that kind of capability. It'll take a lot of work for us to surpass Iran, Russia, and I'm moving from position number 6 to position number 1. Israel, US. It would take a lot of work for us to surpass that. But for us to get into the top 10, I definitely think it's possible. But now you're talking about coordination at a national level and mobilization of institutions like the CSIR, Denel, Armscore, and that's difficult. That's always been very difficult for us. We're not short of talent. We're not short of capability. We're short of we need people who know how to mobilize that kind of capability at a national level, who have the mandate and who have the authority to do so, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. You think that. I do also think the potential, and one day the country will realize it.
Well, that is my hope.
Yeah.
That one day we realize it. I just feel the opportunity now presented by digital transformation, fourth industrial revolution, the adoption of technology. When you look at Africa and the adoption of the smartphone, it does really present an opportunity for us to leapfrog other nations and become the front runners in a lot of innovation, technology innovation. Like it's truly the moment for an African renaissance. However, I think there's various things holding us back, including I don't want to call it it's difficult for us to have secrets. It's difficult for us to keep ideas, and it's difficult for us to monetize those ideas and keep those interests, African interests. If you think of any good technology, any good startup, immediately it gets adopted overseas. Think about the brain drain, but don't think about it as a person. Think about it as a person, a product, an idea. It's all in terms of that brain drain. It all leaves. So anything that's something packed with pure potential, that has the ability to transform our nation or our continent, ultimately it does find its way onto some other soil, right? And it's hard to fight that system. It's hard to beat that system and to somehow transform Africa. But the best opportunity we have right now is now.
Yeah, okay, on that...
Sorry, was that a bit too deep?
No, nothing was too deep.
Too hectic.
I was just looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, how optimistic are you for, let's say that fourth industrial revolution, and kind of also where do you see, well, there's two questions really, there's that objective. To me, there isn't the question of if, it's a matter of when. And then we have those sort of, from my own observance of the scene, there's definitely progress. Sometimes the progress feels too slow, but I kind of feel like there's continual progress, and that's good. But then there's also the ever-changing nature of the world. And I mean, what's your prediction? Are the machines going to destroy us? What's going to happen to AI? Just like on that topic, and obviously you have some stuff with machine learning and things, but I don't know. Because it's kind of hard for us to foresee, the future of our grandkids. What the world is going to be like when they're going to school or whatever.
Look, AI is there to augment the human being, not replace the human being. I think don't get me wrong, I think certain jobs will be made redundant. But they should be, right? Because they can be replaced by machines and allow people to do creative things,
sure.
Right? And I think that's truly where people will find a space where they feel inspired. I think, and that's what I mean by augmentation. I think AI will augment us. I think the dangers of AI are actually kind of black and white, right? It's the implementation. Badly designed autonomous vehicle could kill somebody. Sure, 100%. But, that shouldn't surprise anybody. And the necessary policy, I've never been a big fan in my early years of that policy. I just didn't quite understand it. I understand it today. But the necessary policies and, rules around adoption, etc., are very similar to, the Industrial Revolution, right? Could the crusher, could a human being fall inside the crusher, slip off the conveyor belt, fall into the crusher, and die? Sure, but that's why we build the machines and the practice around it to ensure that doesn't happen. However, adoption is like not adopting and not moving forward is not an option. So, no, I don't see, when I think of artificial intelligence, I don't see the doom and gloom. I think sometimes that's very, it makes for salacious media and thought process. But I think also if you're not familiar with the essence of how AI works and fits together, I think it's easy to create these narratives in your mind that, machines are going to rule the world. I don't think that's quite the case. I think machines are going to elevate themselves and us. And we're going to do things that were previously impossible. And the world will change, as it always does, right? That's the only consistent thing is change.
Yeah.
And not embracing that change or, fear of that change or, protesting or not wanting to adopt AI and the advantages that it offers, which that's closer to home for your business than for mine, right? With the recent activity on content creation, etc., and where AI fits in,
sure,
and what that does to the writer itself.
Yeah. ChatGPT is meant to replace journalists and developers, and I'm like, must be important.
So I think it is it's worth talking about, but no, I don't see doom and gloom. But I never see doom and gloom. I'm not programmed that way, and I can't afford to be that way. I always see the opportunity where everybody else sees the darkness.
Yeah. Sure. I guess that's what also helps you while you achieve the success.
No, but you're pretty much the same.
Yeah, we try to be.
It's a large part of our job, right? Is finding the opportunities.
Well, actually, from the successful people that I've met, it's kind of that has been the traits that they have had. And they are generally good people. So that kind of really stood out as something to, aspire to. Maybe the laws of attraction, maybe some of those things that actually work. Okay, on the thing of just my guess, it's either the scenario of Terminator, and kind of I've been into conspiracy theories when I was younger in my life, and kind of the thing that kind of looking at children is like the world's not going to end. So I have to be an optimist. So one scenario is that actually, because if you can probably legislate it, but if the thing gets too powerful, because it's also, sure, it's hype now and it's very far from it, and there's only so much that machines can figure out for themselves. But everybody in the world is like, oh, this is going to carry on and it's going to get faster, and we all know that change is happening. So 50 years time, 100 years time, is it what happens then? But I can, my hope is that it makes us understand our role in this AI. Because the AI will be, or our role in the one. Because even the AI is trained off the data that we produce.
Yeah.
And if we're writing racist and ignorant things and hateful things, the AI is learning of that. If we putting in good research and maybe even being honest, or eventually, but we are part of that those machines are going to learn from our data.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually, if there was such a thing, we would be that small little cell. We would be a part of it. And, I'm hoping that if it does come to, then it'll just help us realize our sort of better role in the universe and are part of the one. And, we kind of understand that we are sort of part of that. And we also have the benefit of the one to, I don't know, take humanity into who knows.
But if you just think about the statement you made right now, in many ways, AI has taught you a lot more about yourself than, right? Because we realize now how racist and how polarized we are through the learnings of the AI and its behavior post-learning, right? So I'm assuming you're referring to when, like Microsoft creates an AI bot and it becomes a complete racist, and then we realize, well, okay, how did that happen? And it's because that's the content we put out there. That's the message we send out there that the computers then feed off and then react to, right? And maybe, hopefully, that makes us more self-conscious, because it's something that we don't like to think about. I think in that sense, AI is that mirror, and it's forcing you to look at yourself critically and understand, who are you really? Because we like to believe we're these great people, and we like to believe things like racism is dead, and we're not polarized, and that our beliefs, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. But it's just not the truth. And I think when the AI actually shows you that, you start analyzing yourself, what you put out there a little bit better. You start understanding that a lot of that hate is engineered, right? So it's my belief that a lot of that is created. The polarity is created there. It's part of the machine, right? If you look at the Natal violence, for example, a lot of that, the racial tension was by design, right? Created to create two polarized opposites. And I don't want to go again into too much of political statement, but like I'll give you a simple example. Some of the media that was shared was clearly overdubbed. Some of the imagery that was shared was from protests that happened in South America. Who creates that content and puts fake content like that out onto public platforms to instigate further violence or to instigate racial tension between various groups? That's engineering. That's engineered, and it's engineered at a very high scale. So not random people are not going to do that. They're not going to go through that kind of effort. And I think the world needs to realize that some of the stuff is us acting exactly how, for lack of a better word, I would say the machine wants us to act, so that we can behave in a particular predictable manner, so that we can vote in a predictable manner, so that we can buy in a predictable manner. Or let's not say a predictable manner, but in a manner that the machine wants you to behave in, wants you to buy in. So how much of our thinking is actually by design? How much of that hate is by design? And it's a really deep question, but it's the truth, right? Because that's what we do at Snode, right? Is we see the fake news, we see the propaganda, We see the sources of it. And the sources of it is not random people. It's paid marketing firms, that are, it's...
Well, we all know what propaganda means. Obviously it exists.
True.
I mean, it's a difference of being positive and being naive. Obviously, at least from my perspective, I understand that the world is very far not from that. I don't expect things from people that I expect from myself, from strangers. But kind of as leaders, I do also feel like, well, we should be more those people. You should be, like, if it doesn't exist in your world, you should try to get rid of it. If that hatred doesn't exist in your world, and you can actually get rid of it if you work on yourself enough, at least to the majority. And I'm sure some people completely that are enlightened or whatever. In your world, it actually disappears. So you can't really go and as leaders, we kind of building a world, and obviously we want to make it as good as we can possibly make it. So from that kind of strategy perspective, I have that very positive, positive mindset, but it's very different from being naive that, the person might not be lying to me, or that, competition, let's all work together and nobody's going to be selfish about things, or,
No, I think that is a naive, like, I think the truth there is at Snode, we see our responsibility slightly greater than just, our world and how we behave and our actions. We see the possibility of using data and technology to open the curtain and expose the truth on, misinformation, disinformation, information warfare, fake news, propaganda, and no matter where the source is, help people understand how they're being manipulated to hate, right? And I think, in all honesty, Africa is plagued by certain social evils like human trafficking, and we largely believe at Snode, we solve the cybersecurity conundrum, but our platform is built to consume data and find negative threats at any scale, and regardless of the data it's looking at. So if you give us network data, we'll find viruses or malware. But if you give us social media data, we'll find fake news. Plus financial data, we'll find fraud. That's the beauty of using mathematical algorithms, right? Similarly, if you give us social media, we'll find fake news, we'll find election tampering. We'll find exactly the instigators of violence, the instigators of hate, and we'll disclose them. We'll stop them. The public will know the truth. People will change the way they see themselves and each other, and they'll understand the way that they're being manipulated by,
fake accounts and opinions and whatever.
Exactly.
Because maybe the other danger is that then it just, without us ever knowing, just whole reality is controlled by some AI which somebody is puppeteering and saying, lie to them because I want to be the main guy, or whatever.
Well, if somebody tells you that's a conspiracy theory, think about Cambridge Analytica. Think about...
But in a real sense, I would imagine a lot of... I just hope that's not the ultimate end. But in a very real sense, I imagine a lot of the cyber warfare now is around actually using that to control opinion to, generate fake stuff.
Yeah, I think the easy way to look at cyber warfare is cyber is not something new. Cyber is just a vector. You still got the same criminal on the other end. You still got the same espionage or the same propaganda machine or the same adversary with the same intent and modus operandi, using the same tactics. It's just cyber is a new vector. The vector, of course, it's completely different, right? Imagine you can fire a bullet from anywhere in the world, reach its target instantly, and you cannot be traced back to its source. That's kind of like what a hack is, right? Or an attack is. And it can take out a power grid, like the Russians did with, Ukraine. Or it could cause an explosion, like, what happened in Natanz, in the uranium facility. Natanz is in Iran. So, albeit a different vector, it's a vector where attribution is very, very difficult. And often you get these false flag strategies, right? So the NSA got hacked by the shadow brokers. And the shadow brokers had something called the Vault 7 leaks. And inside the Vault 7 leaks, something called the Marble Framework, which the NSA, it's code that, it's an application that the NSA developed to make their attacks look like they came from other countries. They changed like the operating system type, the keyboard layout, that kind of thing, to make it look like actually Iran performed the cyber attack. Now, I'm not taking a Iran, US, Russia sort of stance. It's not what I do. I have no political sort of alignment or anything. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, though, is cyber as a vector. Offers a whole lot of benefits to the adversary, and that's what makes it dangerous. It's still the same adversary. It's just they're far more effective. The propaganda is far more effective. You can spread fake news and it reach an entire nation, and it can affect an election. Prior to that, it was largely print media and it was difficult. Now it's relatively easy to create a deepfake, for example. So if you think about how powerful the vector is, it's an insanely powerful vector. Now in the hands of, your traditional criminal, your traditional terrorist, your traditional oppressive regime. Yeah.
It must be hectic for you actually dealing with that level of issues and actually establish nation security and I don't know.
Yeah, when we did the 2016 Fees Must Fall research, we didn't expect that the source of a lot of that racial tension would lead back to political parties. It wasn't the students, right? Putting out a lot of those messages of hate, and when there was any outbreak of violence, the concentration of students was low because we were using the actual devices, right? We were using the tweets and the Facebook images, using the metadata from there to analyze, when would a student protest turn to violence? But it was hard because there were no students involved. And then we didn't know that this would get traced back to political entities. So it's hard to release research now that, kind of points the finger. Yeah, we're in a very delicate space where we need to watch what we say and, who we talk about and try not to be offensive in the wrong way. But we're pretty agnostic at the same time. We don't think there's good guys and bad guys. We just think there's this fact, and as long as we stay with the facts, we're pretty safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot like you and your job, as a matter of fact. Am I right?
Yeah, I hope that the good guys will win in the end. I mean, there's obviously, it's like the technology is not bad. You can always use in guns, okay, for hunting, but apart from that, it's hard to actually see how they were, all the weapons and things. Maybe to actually protect your family from somebody that has no business invading it.
No, but your point's a very good point, right? The same way cyber is this big risk, it's also this big opportunity, right? So we can use, the same way we use the fees must fall data, right? We can use cyber to, to find human trafficking victims. We can use cyber to find kidnapped victims. I'm using very specific cases because some of those particular cases is like we've developed tech in those spaces. You can use it to solve a lot of social evils. So don't see cyber as a one-way street where it's all bad news. No, actually, if used correctly, it can be a massive differentiator in leveling the playing field for traditional crime and other social evils like disease. We talk so much about crime, but if we could use our data properly, we could predict disease outbreak and we could respond to disease and natural disasters so much better. Whether it be floods in Libya or whether it be, the outbreak of COVID. If we can mobilize our data across the continent, because these are the kinds of issues that affect Africa more so than everybody else, right? And, then we can do a lot of good stuff in Africa.
And I hope there will be lots of homegrown solutions actually addressing all those things. But yeah, most definitely for every, people that are trying to steal, there are some people that are trying to stop them and keep their community safe. So yeah, I definitely hope that defense world will, it's difficult, with political parties and things like that. It's just, these guys have their opinion. They want to push their opinion. These guys have their opinion. They want to push their opinion. They shouldn't be cheating in pushing their opinion. They should win it on a fair sort of, well, if you agree with me, then that should be my opinion. If you agree with me, that should be my opinion. Actually, there should be differences of opinion, and that's others. But it's just, you always kind of the selfishness. It's the evil. If you start using it for just your purpose because you want your political party to win, but then let's start cheating, and there are fair grounds to actually, win the public opinion, I guess, in a
a better way
process, yeah.
Yeah. Look, I mean,
but at the same time, we're not naive that the world is very far from it, and we wish. I want to make my world, and I don't know, to try to build it as close to that utopia that I hope one day it'll reach, and just to sort of, when I see the evil, kind of just brush it off, and in my own space, be happy, because I have love, and I don't really have hate or bad wishes on other people, or I don't believe that actually serves me any good, like from my emotional experience.
Yeah, look, the downside of that is if you look at your own space, you're in a pretty safe zone, you're surrounded by love, your kids are safe, etc. I think that's important, and I think it's important that you maintain that. I think at Snode, however, we've realized that our talents and our capabilities could be used, because not everybody exists in that space. That space is the same for me as it is for you, and for those around us. But it's also, you must be careful not to turn a blind eye to the fact that it's not true for everybody, and it's that everybody else that some of us can do something about it. In a way, all of us can do something about it. But I think the difference between the way we see it at Snode is, okay, we've got this talent that's been given to us by, the universe, by society, by, and the idea is, how can we use these talents and these skills to make sure that we can extend that safety net so that it's inclusive of everybody, so that everybody gets to walk around with that feeling of safety and with that, in that, loving environment. But some kids are not born into that, and I think that's the ultimate mission of Snode, is how do we use technology to extend that safety net so that it's all inclusive. First our continent, first our country, then our continent, and then the world. It's a huge ambition. And it's easy to sit here and talk about it and say like, oh, well, that's what we want to do. But I think it's I'd be lying to you if that's not at the back of our minds when we create technology at Snode, is, the fact that our technology could help save lives. Yeah. And that ultimately that's where we want it to be. And we don't mind, the people who pay us for cybersecurity, they kind of fund that research and they fund that capability. We don't mind doing that part free, right? So how do we use data to make sure that every kid, grows up safely and has equal opportunity and, no harm is brought to them.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, it's in your space, it's even harder to be optimistic dealing with all the crap and actually specifically dealing with crime. And,
yeah.
But like they say, it's the people that did nothing about it is the bad in the world. That saw the evil and did nothing about it. So, somebody has to go fight.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, we can't talk about that too much, about what we do in that space, because firstly, it's just
yeah. No. Like for me also,
But that kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah. But for me personally, it's maybe I'm naive, or maybe I'm just trying to keep myself away from it. But I came from a war-torn country. I wasn't really in the war, but we were on the sidelines of war. From the culture and my country's history, heritage is also like filled with war. It's horrible. I hate it. It's something that I want to. For me, it's a. Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it.
Yeah. No, look, it's some of the stuff we see and some of the stuff we have to work with sometimes. It's, but ultimately we understand our purpose. We understand our why. We also understand that if we don't do it, we genuinely don't believe somebody else will do it.
Does it affect you psychologically like that when you see some...
My kids don't live here. So you know what I mean? So it does. You just ask my neighbors, actually. My neighbors will tell you, it does affect us. And just this morning I was having a conversation with my team on something we call triggers. And it's when you browse certain content to make sure that you're not triggered by it. Because even though you may have no thoughts or anything, it's part of the risks of doing what we do. And lots of forensic investigators will tell you that some people can get triggered by those things and then develop problems around.
Well, and trauma is a real thing, and then dealing with those sort of things, surely it's going to affect you. Like, I don't know, just listening to the bad news of crimes getting done on innocent people.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff is, I'm sure, pretty horrific. I mean, I mentioned human trafficking and stuff like that. I mean, it's really, hopefully, the world will evolve past that phase. We'll catch the people that are sick enough to do it. We'll have healthier people living.
No, look, but it is difficult work sometimes, but we're okay. We're driven by our purpose, and I think when you're successful at the other end of it, like we've been successful in a lot of these cases, that's all the positivity you need to keep going. So it's really difficult problems to solve, even though technology is so pervasive. Like almost everybody carries a smartphone, and we have the ability to track that and trace that. It's still difficult when you're working with law enforcement, etc., to always have the answers. There's been most cases we don't have the answers, but in those cases where we do, and we make an impact, and we know, somebody's found because of the work we did back at the office. No, it makes everything worth it.
Yeah, for sure, it's noble.
I've gotten a little bit more responsible with eating habits, exercising. I stay in Vietnam, which is, I don't know if you know, it's the leanest country. Yeah.
Lots of bicycles.
Sorry?
Is it the bicycles or?
No, it's like every couple of blocks they have these sort of adult jungle gyms.
Okay.
Which are absolutely amazing. I got some photos. I'll show you later. And essentially you can go and use the gym. It's right outside your house. And you can do push-ups, pull-ups. There's static bicycles. There's a variety of
it's like an outdoor gym.
It's a full outdoor gym. And it's designed so that it's healthy both for the elderly and, you'll get young kids who come out and then it's also very social, right?
Oh, sure.
Because you meet everybody from around the neighborhood, etc. And I've taken to that a lot. So, I've started climbing. That's been a lot of fun. But mostly, I've been doing the outdoor gym and the pool. I've been trying ice baths.
Have you tried it?
Yeah.
And? Did you make it? How long did you?
No, I can only be in there for like 3 minutes. My hands came up, right? But a lot of it is also mental, right? A lot of the reason why you're jumping out of that ice bath is mental. So I'm one of those people who you turn on the cold shower, I start breathing heavily, even though there's enough oxygen, right? So there's a lot of these sort of survival reactions, which I'm learning about myself, that I'm learning now to sort of calm down. Never really good at swimming, but it's primarily because when I'm under the water, I panic. So I'm starting to learn not to panic and to stay calm. And that's helped me a lot, not just in terms of the ice bath, but in terms of like just being at work, or whatever the case is, or dealing with a lot of stress, etc. I think the ability to stay calm is critical to functioning, to high performance function. That's whether you're an athlete or whether you're, working at Snode. And I think the best way to describe Snode is it's like a high performance sports team, right? Where we're trying to teach our team how to, stay cool and calm under pressure, how to deal with a lot of pressure, a lot of workload, and how to work in a team dynamic, which is, can be very competitive, but also very collaborative, right? Because we work as one functional unit, like an orchestra. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think specifically for you guys, actually, they meant psychology and actually staying calm. I think those iPads, they say that you put yourself in a high-stress situation, it helps you with other high-stress situations.
Yeah.
But I think if you have to deal with a lot of cuck things, it's, for you guys specifically, it must be harder to keep sane. Because eventually, I mean, you see too many ugly things in life, it can also go crazy.
Yeah, or even simply when clients get attacked, right? How does our security operations team don't panic? Because it can be total chaos, right? Clients can descend into complete chaos when an attack is happening. How do you keep everybody calm, organized? How do you keep everything structured? And how do you respond with clear mind? So yeah, teaching that, a lot of that can be taught by putting somebody's head under the water, you know, and teaching them to not panic. You'd be surprised how the one is so closely related to the other and how much of a good effect. You know, like sports in general is like strategy played out in a very short time frame. And those habits or those learnings that you could take out of sports very easily translate into business. Yeah.
Well, our businesses won't be good if we're not good people, right? It's only a matter of time. If we want to have some longevity and actually really make an impact on the world, we have to make sure that we
stay
good. Yeah. I thank you so much. We're out of time. I thank you so much for coming. I wish you all the success. I hope the story gets even bigger. I hope that it is an example that somewhere in this universe, if somebody's going to see it, it's going to inspire some youth. And yeah, that you go from strength to strength. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.